we don't grow unless it's painful not to grow. So it's sort of that thing where it's like, we have to buy another truck and mixer because if we don't, we're going to have to lose out on all this business. That's kind of our approach on whether or not you invest in more equipment or more personnel.
Welcome to Main Street Makers, a podcast that features real, local small business owners who have transformed their passions into profitable businesses. Learn from fellow small business owners on how they overcome challenges, find opportunities, and create thriving operations that make our neighborhoods more vibrant, connected places to live. I'm Tiffany, and this podcast is brought to you by NAV, the business credit platform that believes every small business owner deserves the chance to succeed. Now let's get to this week's show. Hi, we are so excited to welcome Caton Hansen and Brent Skinner to talk about their business, Skinner Brothers Pool Plastering. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So the business entity itself has been around for like over 70 years, which is impressive.
8 years this year, yeah.
Wow, okay. So can you walk us through how the operation got started and how it turned into a 3-generation business?
Yeah, Brent, you'll know a lot more of the details, I think, so jump in. But our grandpa, he was a house plasterer in Southern California. Him and his brother were plastering houses, and then I'm not sure how, but they got into pool plastering. And they were pretty successful, but the brother, so our great uncle, I guess, his name's Wallace. He was more interested in doing some chemical stuff with pools. He got into chlorine, pool chemicals with chlorine and chlorine gas. And so he sold the business, or my grandpa bought him out. And I think that was 1948.
1948 bought Wallace out, yeah.
And actually, technically, I was talking to another uncle who actually said it's actually 4 generations because their dad also plastered.
True.
So they started plastering pools, my grandpa, in 1948 and ran that business until I think 1980.
Yeah.
It was when my uncle Brian and then Brent's dad, Brian and Vance, took it over from our grandfather. And then they ran it for years, and probably 2010-ish. They sold it to a cousin of ours, a son of Brian, Kyle, actually. And he ran it until just a few years ago and sold it to another buyer. So it's now, that specific business is out of the family. And they actually even changed the name. I don't know if you saw that, Brent. They've changed the name from Skinner Pools or Singing S Pools. My grandpa named it Singing S Pools because he was a tenor. He was an opera singer, like a tenor. And so it was kind of his mark, and any kind of business he had. And he was like a serial entrepreneur, our grandpa. He did the pool business after he left the pool business. He moved to Washington State, northeastern Washington, and that's actually where I grew up, and to farm and run a dairy. And then he had a couple other different kinds of businesses. He was always trying to figure out the next thing
Meat pie
to make some money. Yeah, he made these like meat pie like turnovers you could buy in Albertsons and Safeway stores, and he was always trying to make a buck. And he passed away 2007, and it wasn't very much longer, I think, around that time, where kind of the rest of the family that was still in Southern California moved up to Utah, the kind of south of Salt Lake, and so they've been here now in the pool business for a long time. And we mentioned before that they're sort of pioneers. Like my grandpa plastered the first color plaster pool in California. And so, everything was always white. You know when, Brent?
I don't know what date it was, but it was in the 50s.
Okay. So they were always sort of on the cutting edge and the, pioneers in the industry, plastering and focusing on the skill itself, making things really nice. And so one of the oldest pool plasterers here in Utah actually learned from our grandfather working for him in Southern California. As it stands now with Brent and I, our Skinner Brothers, we're kind of trying to take over the market. We've got a good brand that's helpful for that, obviously. And We've made some really good connections over the last couple of years. Brent, he's been in the business for, when did you move here, Brent?
I moved here in 2012.
So he's been plastering pools here in Utah, and you'll probably have questions about this down, later on, but because of his connection and his knowledge in the local industry, we were able to hit the ground running and have plenty of work to start out, and more than doubled our business over the last year. He said earlier, it's a good partnership. Brent has all the skills and the understanding that I don't, and I can help him on the things that he doesn't have experience in. And honestly, it's been an awesome partnership. We're cousins, we're buddies.
We're brothers.
We call it, yeah, we call each other brothers. It's been a lot of fun over the last couple of years of, getting into a different business than I personally had been in before, and figuring things out. I did work in the pool industry a little bit before I went to school and got into the law, and then, into tech. But I spent a couple of years working for my two uncles, Brent's dad and the other uncle, down in Southern California. So that was another reason I was like comfortable getting into it, because I had some experience.
We had a lot of backing too, having our dads, my dad and my uncle with us to show us the ropes and just, help us out through the way. Now they're tired, but they're still around, which is nice.
Yeah. Anytime we have any kind of difficulty, we can talk to them, and they're always there to help us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. We've talked to a lot of people that it seems like it makes it easier, not only to have that support, but just to have I don't know if it's like less fear or something, but just to have a generational entrepreneurs. Like a lot of the people we've talked to have had either parents or grandparents who were entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the blood, right? It's like you're not as much, or not as afraid maybe of failure, because it's normal. We've seen it for years and years and years. Like his dad, our grandpa, my dad also had a couple little entrepreneurial kind of gigs he did over the years. And then I've done it myself for a little bit, right? And so it's like, like, hey, it's going to be hard, but we could do this because we've seen these other people do it.
Yeah. It's still a tough road though. Doesn't matter who you have behind you, but it's tough. You got to deal with a lot of different personalities and, the contractors that you work with, stuff like that. And it happens fast, in the last 3 years. It's coming up 3 years right now in May. And what we've gone through and what we've done has been absolutely insane. A lot of people say working with family is really hard, but it's not if you have really good family to work with. And we learned from watching my dad and my uncle and my grandpa, our grandpa, and they just fought constantly. It was tough. But me and Caton, no. We know how it should run and how things should run and stuff like that. That's why we have such a great relationship. And yeah, everyone talks about when you open up a company, you got about 5 years to see if it fails or not, whatnot. It can't. Not the way we run it. It's tough, but it's awesome.
What's been the hardest thing? Because you say it's been a tough road. What has been the hardest challenge that you faced?
Supplying our workers with work and growing and teaching guys how to trowel. That's the biggest thing is, a lot of these guys that we have working for us they're young. They're in their 20s, 30s. There's a bunch of different ideologies to deal with between the crew and stuff like that. And just keeping them busy has probably been the toughest for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. There's a couple things that I have learned, like coming from more of a, white collar background to the blue collar background, is there's a lot of differences that make the whole sort of HR function way more difficult on this side of things, where, like Brent said, you're dealing with young guys that aren't really sure what they're going to do with their lives. A lot of times they've made some decisions that they're sort of stuck where they're at, right? They're just, it's like the only thing they really have left as an option is to work in construction. A lot of these guys are making like really dumb decisions in their personal lives and their money. And, so you're dealing with that kind of thing. And one of the things that we've just sort of accepted and are happy to actually do is to help these guys. That's part of the business. It's yeah, we want to provide a really good plaster experience for people who are putting in a pool, but we also want to help these guys that work with us to learn and grow and become better people and enjoy life. I actually posted this a while ago on LinkedIn. We got this guy, we call him Big Gabe. He works for us, and he meets all those things that I talked about, all the kind of the issues in his life. He's young, he's made some dumb decisions and struggles like financially, but like he comes to work with a big grin on his face every day. He's like the happiest guy I've ever met. He works hard, and it's like super satisfying to go home at night knowing that we got these guys that in the end, you learn to love them and they're like part of your family. And I'm just grateful for them. Like without them, we can't operate. And so it's a little bit, I feel like, a mind shift within that kind of the construction industry. I think a lot of companies are run in a way that it's sort of just, this is, human labor. We don't really care much about it. We just want a job done. And so we're kind of, I think, maybe turning that a little bit on its head, and we want to treat our employees so that they love to work with us and feel like they're part of our family and that we actually care about them.
Yeah, 100%. Because growing up as a kid working for my dad and my uncle was tough. We got screamed at, they were tough to work with. And now that we have this company, these kids are coming in, and we want to show them that this is a family here. We want to teach you everything that we know, as long as the respect's there, and we'll take care of you as much as we can. But we're trying to teach these young guys to, grow up and have a good life.
Yeah, and it's the workforce in that industry is hard to have consistency, and so that's definitely obviously a reason why we do it, is also to help with the consistency and not have a lot of turnover. That part of the business, I feel like, falls a lot more on Brent's shoulders. Making sure we have a crew and training of the crew and everything. Some of the difficulties that I didn't expect getting into this business are related more to like the finance side and the cash flow. And just being in like the tech industry before this, I felt like there were definitely some opportunities maybe to find some efficiencies through tech in the construction industry. And I remember when I was first getting everything kind of set up and opening a bank account, the bank account asked me if I wanted to order checks, paper checks. And I was like, it's 2023. Like, who uses paper checks? I'll tell you who uses paper checks. The entire construction industry uses paper checks, right? And so it was like a pain in the butt because I was like, crap, there's really not a very good option for a business checking account for small business owners. Like, at least not a really good digital version that I've found. I think there are some maybe now, but yeah, when I was setting everything up, there really wasn't a great option. And so I signed up for an American Express checking account, which doesn't have any brick and mortar shops. It's all online. And so you have to do your deposits online. And so I'm taking pictures of checks, and there's all kinds of rules and, limits on how much you can deposit at a time. And they hold the funds. And it was just this mess. And I was like, I can't believe this is something I have to deal with running a business in the year 2023, like paper checks. It's stupid. And then related to that is just cash flow. You realize pretty quick that you need a lot more money than you think at first to get it up and running and keep things moving while you're waiting for the revenue to come in. Even when we've done the work and you're still waiting, most builders probably pay us anywhere from 15 to 30 days. But we have some builders that won't pay us for months. Like we have, accounts receivable now that we haven't been paid for pools that we did last summer. And we're still trying to track down payment. And the crazy thing is they always pay. Like we've never been stiffed, right? Someone's never said, no, I'm not paying you. But, you end up getting treated like a bank for a while with some of the builders. And so that's been a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that. But overall, it's been a good year or two of learning, and we've really seen some good success over the last year. And, I think we're hitting this year, kind of hit the ground running, and it'll be, we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's great. Did you ever find a solution to the check issue?
Yes. And this is probably a spot where you guys can decide how you want to edit it, right? Because I ended up using a service called Melio, Melio. And it's a fintech that basically it's an electronic check service where you just attach your account to it, and you can it actually will sync with your QuickBooks and all that. And I can send a check from them or through them online. So I say, hey, this is the vendor I want to pay, fill it all out and hit send, and they'll send a paper check to them. And it's gotten better. I don't use it as much. And then also, like with QuickBooks, I've just started to invoice through QuickBooks, and most builders will pay just online. And the business has changed a little bit to where we're not paying as many contractors or vendors now that we're just plastering pools. So we're actually just billing people more than anything, and getting money from other people. So it hasn't been as much of an issue. But as far as like solutions for business checking, I think Mercury actually has a pretty good option right now, but I haven't taken the time to look into it. And so I'm just kind of stuck with, I have the American Express checking, all, it's just digital. And then I have a business account with Chase just at the local branch here.
Yeah, it does seem like solutions are limited for small businesses, which is so interesting.
Crazy.
Yeah. And like, I had this horrible experience with Chase where I built a pool for my brother, and he wrote me a check, and I deposited it into my Chase account, and they flagged it for fraud, and they didn't tell me anything. I was trying to pay an online American Express bill, and it bounced because the bank account that I had attached to it was closed, and I had no idea that Chase just closed my account for fraud. And it was this whole thing to open it up and get it all figured out. I had to go into a local branch with my brother. We had to bring our passports, and he had to write an affidavit that the check he wrote was a real check. And so it was like crazy. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. How does anyone really run a business? For a minute, I got really mad at Chase and said I'll never use them again, but I'm still using them. So it's hard. It's a pain in the butt to switch over, right?
It really
switch banks.
He gets to deal with this stuff.
Yeah. No, it really is. It is. Yeah, it's a struggle. You have to change everything. So, yeah, what a pain. So switching gears a little bit, when you think about growth, how do you decide what to invest in, what to hold off on, and when to make those calls?
Growth is your workers. When you get your workers, and you got to start training them to be on the job without you, stuff like that. That's what I'm going through right now, is I'm trying to train this crew to be there without having me have to be there. And that way I can actually help grow this company more. But that's where it starts, is with your workers. The more workers you have and you trust them and they know their job, then you can get out. I'm able to get away and be with Caton and, get more business and be able to handle that way. So.
Yeah. And then as far as actual growth, in 2024, we plastered 35 pools. And then in 2025, last year, we plastered 85 pools. And that growth mostly came from adding a few new builders to the builders that we do pools for. And then a lot of the builders that we already were doing work for just were building more pools. And like I said earlier, Brent has a lot of contacts and relationships already. And so he's constantly kind of hitting up these builders to grow our, the bandwidth that we have, right? So we actually could do more pools with the crew we have than we did even last year. We could probably, I don't know, Brent, we could probably do another 40 pools.
Oh yeah.
With the same crew. We're not plastering a pool every day. And back in the day, it's a little different here in Utah, but back in the day in California, we would plaster 2 pools a day. Here in Utah, it's mostly 1 a day because they're not as close. So you're not traveling you can't travel as far, right? And then the pools are a lot bigger here in Utah. They build huge pools here. So it takes longer. But we could do more work if we had more work to do it. And then, so then it's like, how do you grow sort of through that, marketing and sales and that sort of thing. And we've really just focused on adding new builders and, through Brent's connections. And
word of mouth gets you a long ways out here. If you're able to, complete a project with no problems, even if there's a leak or something and you're right on it, and, that word of mouth from those builders. Oh, have you ever worked with the Skinners? They're the greatest. They, even after the job, if something goes wrong, they're always there. And that's a huge thing, keeping really good contacts, being good to your builders and your customers, take care of them. That's a lot of things that other builders or other pool plasterers, should I say, they don't do that. It's hard to get a hold of them after the job. It takes a long time, and that falls on me, but it's good. That's the relationship that you want. You want that word of mouth.
Yeah. I mean, our sort of mantra is we just want our clients to be happy. It's always 2 clients, right? It's always the builder and the homeowner. And so like Brent said, if anything goes wrong, we're there to help out. And the other funny thing is there's a lot of builders here in Utah that are fairly new builders. A lot of like landscapers saw an opportunity to start building pools.
Yeah.
And to build a pool, it's not rocket science. It's not that hard. But we find that a lot of the pool builders are coming to us too for like help and advice. Hey, what do you do about this? How do you do that? And, because our family's been involved for so long in this industry, we know it. So that's helped a lot. And then more kind of theoretical on growth, how do you decide to grow? Like I said, we have bandwidth to do more work with the crew and the equipment we have. And my approach, and this is something I learned working with Levi at Nav and before that, where, we don't grow unless it's painful not to grow, right? Unless it's sort of that thing where it's like, we have to buy another truck and mixer because if we don't, we're going to have to lose out on all this business because our one crew is full, they're busy every day, and we need more people. And so until you actually are there, that's kind of our approach on whether or not you invest in more equipment or more personnel. But it is a little bit different. The personnel issue is because it does take a long time to train someone to be able to plaster. And so really we should constantly be having people that we're training so that, eventually we can do that. But we got a great crew.
Yeah. That's the thing though about this any industry that has to go build, whether it's framing or concrete work, flat work, pool plastering, they come and go. So you get lucky when you find really good guys. So, it's a train. And all of a sudden, when that train stops, you train those guys. And then you hope they stick around. And that goes back to us taking care of our employees, being the best employers that we possibly can be. Because then, other guys come from other companies and they ask our guys, because that kind of stuff happens. And they go, how do you like it over there? And they go, these guys are the greatest. We love them. And that's number one.
Yeah. And we got a really good core group of guys. We got 5 or 6 really experienced and great guys. And then we're kind of constantly adding, like we just added a guy last week that kind of fits Brent's description there. He came from a pool builder looking for something, maybe a little change, and found out we were ready to hire someone. And, he's been with us for a couple of weeks now, and That's just the way it works. Your name gets out there and people know you're doing it as best as you can, as long as you're honest about it and you're just like, hey, this is who we are, people come.
Well, that's where I come in too. When they see me on the job with my guys and they see I run things, I don't raise my voice. I don't yell. I don't want to do what my uncle did back in the day. These are a bunch of grown men that we're working with, and they have families, and they need to be respected in a certain way. So that's another good way of training and keeping guys around, is just being the best boss you can. That way that love stays there. That you're just not a number. You're part of the crew.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Can you go back and talk through a little bit about, you said, what was that from Levi? You said you don't grow until it's painful not to grow. Can you talk through that a little bit more?
Yeah. So the idea is that you get as much out of everything that you have as much as you can before you add. There's a lot of times in business, people will be like, oh, we have to grow to be able to do this. And a lot of times you realize actually the people that you already have are capable of more, and they can do more. And so there's no reason to invest money in growth unless, like, that's what I say, right? Unless it's painful not to do it, meaning you're actually giving up. The opportunity cost of not growing is a ton of loss, right? Of potential revenue. So if we get to the point where we're like, hey, we could run 2 crews, we could be doing 2 pools a day because we have so much work, as soon as that happens, we go buy a new truck. We go buy a new truck and we buy a new mixer. So we got 2 crews going.
Reinvent.
Yeah. And so that it's more on that side of things. Like we're not going to spend a lot of money on, major investments or equipment to maybe grow. It's like, no, right now we got to have it. And so that's when we'll buy it. It is a little tricky, especially in this sort of industry. It's not as easy to just go buy a plaster mixer and pump. Like there's some used ones on the market, but not a ton. And they're expensive, and you kind of have to order them probably at least 6 weeks out. So you have to kind of have your thumb on it and know. And then again, the difference in this is you do need to always train people so that you always have kind of this upcoming crew. But outside of those kind of exceptions, there's no reason to spend money unless if you don't, it's going to hurt you.
Yeah, got to put the work out in front of you in order to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that mindset because it's very different than what a lot of people say. Constant growth, never ending,
Yeah, I mean, you always want constant revenue growth, right? That's something you want, but there's all those things that you have to do to create that revenue growth. And so, there's no reason for NAV to hire, let's say 10 new engineers unless they actually have, a need and a new product they're trying to build, to use those 10 engineers. You just don't, it kind of seems simple, I guess, but I think too often businesses don't realize that, and they're hiring too many people, investing in new things, getting kind of maybe sidetracked on certain things. Like Brent and I have talked about other sort of adjacent possibilities because we're in the industry. There's all these other things we could build pools, we could, sometimes we'll actually do some when it's slower, we'll do different work tile work, but that's really not our bread and butter. I could try to build a company where I got a crew that's doing just tile, or I got a crew that's just plumbing, or we could even get into something totally crazy, totally different. Let's go flip houses or something. It's all kind of falls under the same umbrella, but plastering is the bread and butter. It's what we know and what we're good. And, we think we're probably the best, or at least the same as the best in the world. And
I am the best.
Yeah, might as well just focus on that and build that as much as possible and not worry about sort of the sidetrack. I think it's always funny, this used to happen in previous roles I've been in where you talk about your priorities. You know, you have some meeting in the executive meeting, you'd be like, all right, let's go over our priorities for this quarter. And you're like, wait, that seems like a misnomer. Like, how can you have more than one priority? Like, the definition of priority is the number one thing you need to work on. And so, like, pick the number one thing and forget out everything else. And right now for us, that's being the best pool plasters in the world and growing, so we can support ourselves plus all the employees we have.
Well, it's in plastering too. It's kind of a dying trade. You don't really think about it. You don't. A lot of people don't talk about it, but it is, and that's what's so important right now is to create, for me anyways, is to create this next generation of awesome plasters to keep it going. Because I've been doing this for 27 years, and I watched it go. And I don't want it to do that, because you ain't gonna get no robot to learn how to plaster a pool or do coping, whatever it is. It's impossible. So this generation that we have under us right now is the guys, if they want to stick with it. And at some point I'm gonna retire. I want to retire too, but I want the company to flourish and give the guys an opportunity to have something. So.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good moment in time.
Yeah.
Where you do have a shift because of AI and because of technology. There's a lot of people that are worried about their jobs changing or they're losing their job, but we're not getting replaced by, like you said, there's not a robot coming into plaster pool.
No. No.
And so it becomes this sort of, I don't know. For me, I've talked to Brent about this. Like, I love some of the stuff that I've done in the past, but the satisfaction I get from this work is like so much more than I've ever had in my career. To be able to see something tangible and real, a product that you give someone and they go, "We love this," and then from then on, it's just this sort of family like experience for them. They got their kids are having parties with their friends on the weekends. They got family and friends coming over. It's something they actually use and love. Like, there's no chargebacks in the plaster business, right? Like, no one's saying, "Hey, I didn't really want this. Can you give me a refund?" And then working with the guys, like, that's another thing that is a story for another day. But this point in my career, as important as making money, because you obviously have to pay your bills, right? But if you didn't have to pay your bill, the most important thing for me in my life right now is the people I work with. I want to enjoy being around them. And I do. I get to work with my cousin every day, his brother, our other, another cousin, and guys that I enjoy hanging out with and, just being there and getting dirty with.
I love that. That is so beautiful. And yeah, creating a product, a thing that's tangible, like you said, is really satisfying, I'm sure. That's really
I've had a
inspiring.
couple moments driving around with my kids, and I'll go, "Hey, look at that. See that yard? We did that." "Oh, that's cool, Dad." Because it's lasting. It's there, not forever, but for a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Generations.
So, yeah, and actually that kind of leads me in. So, final question. If somebody wants to build a business that lasts, not just for them, but for the next generation, what advice would you give?
You go first, Kate, and I'll hit them last.
I think the advice I would give is related to this idea of, you've heard probably where someone will be like, "Oh, if you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life," which is bull, right? Like, work always becomes work. There's never something that you enjoy every single moment of the day and that you just love to do and you're happy to do it all the time, because in the end you're working with different people and there's always problems, and no matter what, right? So, but it's related to that. Like, the advice I give, if you want to build something that lasts, find something that you do enjoy, that is sort of you're passionate about, and become really good at, and focus on being good at what you do versus just doing something to make money. because I feel like if you're focused on something that you enjoy and you're good at, the passion that comes from that creates success inevitably. Like if you just get up in the morning and move and work towards goals to become, to do it and do it right, and it's something that you enjoy, eventually you'll become successful and, you'll make money. Obviously, there's exceptions where, if you're passionate about something that no one cares about, maybe that's not going to work out, right? But that's kind of what my advice is. I think in the end, business is actually fairly simple, and the trick is just to keep moving, just to keep pushing through, and you get all kinds of challenges. I know there's nights where Brent doesn't sleep because he's so worried about, hey, do we have enough work for the guys? That sort of thing. And you're going to go through that. But if you're passionate about, hey, we're going to be the best at this and we love what we do, I think that's the most important thing to build out a good business, a lasting business. I mean, this business has lasted forever. And I think a lot of that is, based on that kind of concept.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important things you could do if you're in a business, just like Caton said, and you like it, and you decide, you know what, I want to go out on my own. Make sure and get yourself a good partner. You can, like, I could have done a lot of this on my own, but I couldn't have done everything that I've done without that guy. And then just know that it's a roller coaster ride. It's especially for the first 5 years, it's tough. A lot of different guys are going to come in and come and go, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of different personalities, and bills need to be paid, stuff like that. You need to think about the big picture before you decide, because everyone, like Caton said, you think you want to own your own company, but once you get into it, it's tough. And put your Heavenly Father first. He'll get you by. That's the best way to do it. But yeah, small business owning isn't for the faint of heart. It's tough, but it's a good road. If kids want to start in their 20s and 30s, have at it. Do it. Because I'm 43 this year. The earlier you start, the better. 100%. But just remember, it's tough. It ain't for the faint of heart, just like I said. So
it's tough, but it's rewarding.
Absolutely.
It's worth it.
Absolutely. Especially, like, I love traveling. If I didn't have to do do some office work and stuff like that, and all I had to do is be on the job, run the guys, and just be a foreman all day. But it's honestly just the business side, and that's Caton. Caton is the greatest. So I'm lucky to have him, and we're just going to keep growing. And it is what it is.
Yeah, if we go any longer on this, we'll start crying. So
yeah, be careful.
We got to be careful. It's been an amazing experience for me, and I feel the same about Brent. This definitely isn't something I could have done by myself, and it's just been super rewarding and satisfying to be in business with him and to work together and build something that
I've learned so much.
It's gone well.
That's
yeah. We got to stop. We're gonna get
relax. It's all good. No, I've learned he's the greatest. Kane's the greatest. But yeah, that's what makes it easier on me. But like I said, that goes back to what I said. It's like, find yourself a good partner that you're going to go into business with, that you're going to get along with, that you're going to get stuff done. And if you fall off a little bit, he'll pick you up. If you falls off, you'll pick him up. It's, that's just how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so common for business owners to, I've talked to so many people who have started their own business and they just don't know the level of administrative work that they're facing. Mm-hmm. And we have heard the first 5 years. So it's like, if you can make it past the first 5 years, then you can start delegating, you can start maybe focusing more on what you started it for. So it seems like that's similar. Yeah. So Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was really fun.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you to our guest for sharing their story, and thank you for listening today. Keep in mind that every small business is unique, and there is no such thing as one-size-fits-all advice. So take only what you find helpful. We look forward to next time.